Can an atheist feel spiritual? Let's do this. Greetings, fellow space travelers. BionicDance here. And I would like to introduce you to YouTuber Raylinda Wode. Now, I have no idea if I just pronounced that correctly or not, but she seems to be having a crisis of atheism, as she called it. And while it's not exactly one I've had myself, I can sort of relate. And I would like to, perhaps help if I can, or at least to describe my own experiences in this area in the hopes that maybe it'll help somehow.
So I became an atheist. Which brings me back to the crisis. You see, apparently my spiritual feelings never got the atheist memo. They still keep visiting me every day. I keep telling them it doesn't make any sense for them to exist, but they don't listen. They keep insisting on persisting in existing, especially when I'm writing. I will look over something I've written and I'll think, no, that's not how an atheist writes. But I can't help myself. To me, writing and feeling spiritual are the same thing. And also storytelling. I almost always feel spiritual when I'm telling a story.
Well, the way I see it, that's perfectly reasonable. There's no reason not to feel that. I think what's important to realize is that spirituality doesn't necessarily have to deal with the supernatural. I mean, spirituality can just be a feeling. I find it difficult to describe because, I am a self-described rabid and screaming atheist. But spirituality is something that I feel quite frequently regardless. And it's because, in addition to being an atheist, I'm also an animator. For a while there, I had a webcomic, and I grew up in the age of Spielberg and George Lucas. I grew up on movies like Star Wars and E.T. and Gremlins and Ghostbusters and gosh, I'm not even sure what else. Just tons of that. Labyrinth, there's another good one. The Never-Ending Story, Dragon Slayer. These are movies that inspired me to want to be an animator, to want to be a storyteller. And there are times when I can watch these movies and feel something that, honestly, movies in the present day are very much lacking. There's a kind of feeling to them, of something amazing happening. I think of one of my favorite movies of all time, Explorers. It's about these kids that start having dreams of circuit boards, and they build the circuit boards and discover that it's plans for a spaceship, and they go meet the aliens that sent them the dreams. And these aliens are amusing and fun, and it's a great movie, and it has this amazing soundtrack that all comes together to make me feel this sort of amazement. And the real world doesn't seem to provide that. In fact, there are times when I half suspect that religion is the equivalent of these movies for a lot of people. That they want to feel that same sort of feeling that I feel when I watch something like Explorers or The Last Starfighter or something like that. And that these spiritual feelings are pretty much the same. It's, again, difficult to describe, but there is a certain part of the town I grew up in back in Vermont. I live in Washington State now, clear across the country, but every time I go visit my parents who still live there, I insist on going rollerblading on the Burlington bike path back in Vermont. And to get there, you have to go past this GE plant and the garage where they keep all the buses, the city buses. And there's something about that section of town that feels like a bad, low-budget, B sci-fi 80s movie. like Repo Man, for example. Or maybe even a good low-budget sci-fi movie like The Adventures of Buckaroo Banzai. There's just something about that section of town that feels like those movies. And as I go past that on the way to the bike path, it just feels like that sense of something magical happening like in the movies. And I kept wishing my whole life for something like that to happen, for something like what I saw in the movies to happen. It never did, obviously, and that's why, well, it's not why I'm an atheist, but it's part of it. I mean, the fact is that what we imagine so rarely comes to pass, and it only seems to if it doesn't involve something uber amazing, like having an adventure of the sort you saw in those movies. It was something that always kind of bothered me, that the world was never that cool. I kept waiting for it to get that awesome. I mean, there's a part of this park, Red Rocks Park, where, like near where I grew up, where you go walking on these paths and you're surrounded by pine trees, and it feels like a scene out of E.T., and nothing ever happened. It always bothered me that nothing ever happened. And I always wanted it to. But and in my imagination, like when I'm writing a story or when I'm animating or something, I feel like I'm making those amazing things happen because they're not gonna in real life. Because my imagination needs these things to happen. So, number one, you're not alone. These spiritual feelings, other people get them too. Other atheists get them too. But number two, they're okay. And they don't involve the supernatural. They're just these feelings we get. They're imagination. They're a side of us that wishes for things. And again, as long as you don't let them rule your life, as long as you don't insist that they're true, they're okay. There is nothing wrong with an atheist having an imagination. There's nothing wrong with an atheist wishing for something awesome to happen, something, I don't know, imaginative or paranormal. There's nothing wrong with wishing for that. There's only something wrong with insisting that it's true when you have no evidence for it. There's only something wrong with saying to someone else, how dare you not also believe in what my imagination has told me? That's the only way there's something wrong with it. So if you have spiritual feelings, that's fine. You can still be an atheist and have them. And you can embrace them in a way that does not conflict with atheism. I mean, I'm sure there are tons of atheist writers out there who are writing some amazing stories. And that's fine. It's perfectly fine. So, truthfully, you don't really have a crisis. Not really. All that's necessary right now is to think, hey, I can do this and it's fine. There's no conflict. It's perfectly fine what you're going through right now. Really, really it is. I hope that helps in some way. Until next time, catch you later. Please take the time to rate this video. And hey, if you dig what I do, subscribe. And please visit my Zazzle store, where you'll find all kinds of BionicDance merchandise. Vote me down and I shall become more powerful than you can possibly imagine.